Hey guys, it's Jake here with eTrailer. Today we have a 2020 Subaru Outback Wagon, and we're going to be taking a look at, and I'm going to show you how to install the CURT Class III 2-inch hitch receiver. Adding a 2-inch hitch receiver to the back of your Outback is going to give you a lot of options to haul accessories, whether it be a bike rack or a cargo carrier. Maybe you want to pull a small trailer. Now if you decide to use this to pull a trailer, you're also going to want to look into getting some 4-pole wiring, which is really nice on the Outback. It's all prepped, so all you have to do is just plug the wiring harness in and you're ready to use it. This hitch receiver will feature a 2-inch by 2-inch receiver tube opening, which is going to fit a lot of different accessories, given that 2-inch by 2-inch is going to be the most common size. You'll have a standard 5/8-inch hitch pin hole that'll accept your standard 5/8 pin and clip. The pin and clip do not come with the hitch, so if you need to pick one up, be sure to visit our website. You can find locking, non-locking, anti-rattle, whatever you decide to go with for your particular accessory. These safety chain loops are nice and large so that you can fit different size safety chains, whether it be a clevet style, an S-hook style, to get those safety chains hooked up so you can tow your trailer. The hitch is going to also feature a nice gloss powder coat finish, which is going to help to resist rust and corrosion and look really good for the years to come on the back of your Subaru. Now, as far as your weight capacities go for this hitch, you're going to get a max tongue weight capacity of 350 pounds of downward pressure on the inside of the hitch and a max gross trailer weight rating of 3,500 pounds. That is the trailer plus the load included. You will want to check with your owner's manual of your Outback to make sure that the vehicle is capable of handling those amounts, and if it's not, you want to go with the lowest component between the hitch and the vehicle. I highly recommend checking your submodel too, because a lot of times the submodel is what is going to give it that rating. Now some measurements so you know what you're getting. From the center of our hitch pin hole to the outermost part of our bumper is going to be about 2¼ inches. The hitch receiver tube itself is about flush with this gray portion here, so you shouldn't have to worry about hitting your shins or anything like that. You want to use that 2¼ measurement to compare it to the center of the hitch pin hole on an accessory to the closest part of the accessory to the vehicle. That'll tell you whether or not that accessory is going to fit. From the ground to the top inside of the receiver tube is about 15½ inches. That's high enough off the ground to where you can pretty much use any accessory. You shouldn't have to worry about it dragging on the ground if you go up any steep departure angles or anything like that. The one thing I will say is if you have a cargo carrier all loaded down, staying within the weight ratings of your hitch and your vehicle, sometimes that can cause the vehicle to sag quite a bit. If you need some rear suspension enhancements, we have some on our website. But if not, you want to be careful because that back of that cargo carrier is going to be at a lot different height than that inside of the receiver tube. Now when it comes to the installation of this hitch, you are going to have to remove the rear fascia of your vehicle, which is the plastic bumper piece here. For the Subaru Outbacks, it is not very difficult. It actually makes installing the hitch easier once you get the rear fascia off. A lot of times it's very difficult to get a hitch lifted up underneath the fascia if it mounts from underneath. This one's going to mount to the ends of our frame rail, so flat on the back of the vehicle. But that's also what's going to give it its nice clean look on the back of the car. So in my personal opinion, if you're doing this at home, I would prefer to go with a rear mounted hitch like this than to do a hitch that just lifts up to the bottom, because typically those will have an exposed cross tube that you'll have to see for the rest of your ownership of that hitch. But with that being said, let's go ahead and show you how we did it. To begin our installation, we're going to need to remove some push pin fasteners from underneath our bumper. There's going to be some that are holding it in place, like this one here, this one here. This one is not. This one's just holding the silver part onto the black portion. So just kind of pull down, make sure that you're pulling out the right ones. But we're going to have a few along the back and the middle, and then some along the sides. You can take a trim panel tool or just a flathead screwdriver. I found works pretty good. Just pop out the center, and you should be able to pull out the base. Now we're going to take an 8mm socket. If you have mud flaps on your Outback, there's going to be 2 8mm screws right here and here, and then 2 more push pin fasteners we'll have to remove. And there is one more push pin fastener holding this mud flap on. We'll just reach back there with a flathead screwdriver and pop that loose. Now you'll take the center of your screwdriver. This is a different type of push pin fastener. Push the center, that'll unlock it, and then we'll come in underneath and pry that out. Now before we go pulling our fascia off, we're going to tape this seam because we don't want to have to worry about the push pin fasteners being behind here, making contact with our paint, especially with it being black. Any little nick you're going to be able to see. So we'll just take some painter's tape. It is a good idea to make sure that your vehicle is relatively clean before you do this, because it'll stick a lot better and you won't actually scratch the car with the tape. Now with both sides taped off, we can start peeling back our fascia. When you peel this back, you want to make sure that you don't just have this plastic trim here, that you have the whole piece, and just pry back with your hand, and we'll try to do one clip at a time. It's definitely good to have an extra set of hands because this fascia is very wide and you can kink the plastic if you let it sag too much. We'll pull it out here. Pop it out. The center piece may give you some trouble. Ours popped out pretty easy, but these little tabs here will just clip in here, so just pull straight back. You can see here on our driver's side, we've got some wiring. Just have to take that, push in the little gray tab, and pull out. Now we can set our fascia in a safe place. Now on our bumper beam, you'll see we have a sensor here. We'll have to try to push down on this clip to get it to release. It's not releasing for us, so we'll just pop it with a screwdriver. We'll just hang this down because we need to pull our bumper beam off, and that will stay connected. So we'll go ahead and grab our socket and get this taken off. Now we're going to take a 14mm socket and get the 2 bolts and the 1 nut removed from each side of our bumper beam. If you do the nut last, definitely want to leave it on partially to help hold the bumper beam in place while we get the rest of our hardware removed. With the rest of our hardware removed, we're going to take this last nut off. Sometimes there's some adhesive or sealant holding the bumper beam on. Seems like there's something on this one. Nope, just the pegs here. These pegs we're holding it on. We'll just set this straight down on the ground because it's going to be going right back up with our hitch. Now before we lift our hitch up into place, you'll see that we have 2 plugs that are sticking through our frame rail. We're going to have to get those out of our way so that our hitch sits flat in there. We're just going to use a screwdriver in order to push these down. Sometimes this further back or further forward one works better to pry it out from the bottom. Now we can take our hitch, slide it into our frame rails, making sure everything lines up. Want to make sure the hitch is sitting flat on the back of our vehicle. And then we can take the 2 nuts that we took off earlier. We'll just temporarily thread them back on to make sure our hitch doesn't fall off. Now we can take our carriage bolts that come in our kit. We're going to thread it onto our fish wires. And then in the other end of it, you'll want to put a slight bend because we need to go into the end of our frame rail and come out of the further forward hole. Reach under here, kind of feel for it. See it popped out the end of our frame here. And go ahead and pull our hardware through. Now this part can be kind of tricky up top. You'll have to kind of maneuver the hitch forward and backwards until you can get the bolt to fall through the hole. And once you have the bolt all the way through, we'll pull that fish wire off. And then this part can be kind of tricky. We're going to take our flange nut and thread it onto the bottom of that bolt, but with it being so close to the muffler, it's going to be tricky to thread on. Now we'll take our bumper beam, slide it over those studs, and then we'll take our new hardware, which is going to be a hex bolt and a conical tooth washer with the teeth facing the hitch or the bumper beam. We're going to thread those into those factory weld nuts. Once you get all your hardware in place, we'll go back around and tighten everything up. Once you've got everything snugged up, we'll come back with a torque wrench and torque everything down to the specifications in the instructions. If you don't have a torque wrench, you can typically rent one from a auto body store or an automotive store. Or if you would like to pick one up for your garage, we've got some on our website. For our hardware that's above our muffler or really close to our muffler, if you take a 17mm socket and kind of pull the exhaust or pull the muffler over, you should be able to put it on there. Now before we put our fascia back up in place, we'll need to do a little bit of trimming. You want to measure from the bottom here up 2.5 inches, which is pretty much to the top of this little concave area. And then you want to go over 3.5 inches, which puts you about here on this curve. You can use a Dremel, a multi-tool. With this plastic from Subaru, it's pretty soft. It's not the thinnest stuff, but you can usually use a tin snips like this to get the sides, and then we'll use a razor blade to finish off the top. It just helps so you don't have such a mess if you use a Dremel. Now with an extra set of hands, we've got Jonathan here helping out. We'll take our fascia, lift it back up into place. Don't forget to connect that one connector we loosened earlier or took off earlier, and the sensor here. Now we can just get our fascia slid back on. You want to make sure that the center pops into place, that you get your sides pop back into place. Well guys, that's going to do it for the installation. Hopefully this video helped you decide whether or not the CURT Class III 2-inch hitch receiver is right for you in your 2020 Subaru Outback Wagon.